Thank you for joining me today on The Buzz on Quality. Episode 3, What Does the Client Expect? Let's talk quality. Welcome, everyone. The first podcast I did touched on what quality is, the definition of quality. The second podcast I did was why is quality important? Why does it matter? Either at work or at home, our personal lives, just life in general. And this podcast is mainly looking at what your client or your customer expects from any business related to quality. Because once you have quality defined and you understand why it is important, you really need to understand what your client or customer then expects from you on a regular basis, because they're all going to be different, and it's important to get a grasp of that so you're successful for them every day. So that's going to be the discussion we're going to have for this podcast. The important thing in succeeding for your client or your customer on a regular basis, daily basis, is understanding what they need from you, what they expect from you every single day, or whenever you provide them the products or service. Understanding the scope behind the requirements is key to understanding how you build your quality system and your overall business system to function and be successful for them. And a big part of this is communication, understanding clearly what they expect. Now, some may be easier than others because you have a contract that you're working off of that has a clear set of requirements, and you'll be able to easily understand, or you should be able to easily understand your scope based on that contract, because it should spell out exactly what they expect from you when they expect it. Now, for other areas that may not have a contract, especially in the service world, that may be more challenging. It would be up to the leadership essentially to design what they are going to provide the client or customers, especially if they're just walking in, or if they're trying to reach out to either clients or customers for business. It's going to be on the leadership to build the requirements to be successful for them in order to go out and get those folks. Because especially in the service industry, again, you'll have a wide variety of what the customer expects and wants when they walk in the door. So that would be a little more vague in that regard, which makes it more challenging for any business. When you have a clear-cut set of guidelines from a contract to do X, Y, and Z, that's much easier to design a system. Now, whether you have that contract or you're just dealing with walk-ins, if you're in retail or restaurant business, you still have to design a system to be successful for you and for them. Now, since my main focus is on quality, I'm going to talk a little bit about the quality part in that. And it is important that however a business designs its overall systems, that they factor in quality. And often, and I've seen it far too many times, quality takes a back seat. It is not considered important. And it should be. And I've dealt with a lot of companies where safety was their main focus on top of just getting the job done. Quality was not on the forefront of their minds. And it eventually caught up to them. They eventually got into issues that became essentially non-compliances from a contractual standpoint, because they were not meeting those requirements and they had no way of tracking. And with no way to track, you have no idea how you're doing for what you're required to do. So any company needs to look at, within their business, incorporating quality, because the cost of poor quality will catch up to you and cause you serious issues down the road that will eventually become costly and may cause you to lose business. So whatever the company is, especially from a mid to large size company, they need to think about quality no different than safety and all the other regulatory requirements that they're required to follow. Smaller the business, it may not impact them as much, especially a small mom and pop shop, so to speak. You may not have to have systems in place that you go crazy with because of the size of the operation, especially if there's only a few employees. But any company that has a fair amount of employees, a fair amount of customer client base that they're handling on a regular basis, it's important to have something in place, which I'm actually going to get into in the next podcast on building a quality system. But there, just I want to reiterate that there's too many companies out there that they don't look at and incorporate quality in what they do every day for their customer or client, and that is serious. And I've seen it way too many times where companies get into serious issues because of it. And that's part of the intent behind this podcast and all my other videos on quality, is to get folks out there understanding why quality matters, why it's important in our lives, even though it's probably considered by most to be a boring topic. But we're impacted by quality every day, 24 hours a day. Continuing on the cost of poor quality, again, there's a lot of things that you will see easily, and there's a lot of things you will not see when you are looking at what your client or customer expects, when you are going to look at the scope of what is going to be needed. There's the iceberg where you only see a little bit above the surface of the water, and there's a ton underneath that is hidden. And these are all elements that any company needs to look at when they are reviewing the client customer expectations and scope of work in order to build a foolproof system. So these are things to keep in mind. Closing thoughts on the subject today is that every company out there needs to really look at what their client customer expects, either if it's on paper in a contract, which makes it easier, but I've also seen a lot not really read and understand what's in that contract, and things are missed. So that is still something that needs to be closely monitored. Anyone in a leadership capacity really needs to understand the contract to be successful, and that doesn't always happen, reading it and understanding it. And then once you have an idea of the requirements, you can start looking at building systems to meet those requirements to be successful for your client, your customer. And I'll get into that in the next podcast about how to build a quality system, which essentially becomes a business system. And from a quality system, you can also have other elements that feed off of that quality system, like safety and environmental. So keep staying tuned, and I'll catch you on the next podcast. Glad you could make it to the Buzz on Quality with Justin Buzzard.